Good morning. It is Friday, October 30th, 2020. You can now relax and be informed. Here is your daily bite of news. About 400 National Guard members will be deployed in Wisconsin to compensate for shortages of poll workers on Election Day Tuesday, requested by Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers. This 400 is less than the 2,400 Guard members used last April. Guards members will be serving their own local communities and will not be wearing uniforms. In Mauriceville, Texas, a 25-car train derailed and went off the train tracks Thursday morning. 4 tankers were leaking petroleum and a corrosive product that led the sheriff to order a 1-mile exclusion zone around the crash. The crash cut off power and electricity in the area by knocking out power lines, but no injuries were reported. Wal-Mart is temporarily pulling ammunition and guns from its shelves ahead of the election week in case of possible looting or civil unrest. Items will be off the floor, but available upon request from the storage area. French President Macron added security to schools and religious sites on Thursday after 3 churchgoers were killed in a knife attack in Nice. 2 women and 1 man were dead after being attacked by a lone assailant at the Notre Dame Basilica. The attacker was apprehended and is in custody with injuries. In response to the attack, though he appears to have been alone, was to raise the threat level to maximum. Leaders are calling the Thursday morning attack a motive of Islamic terrorism amid heightened tensions of Macron's recent hard stance on Islamic extremism teachings in France. The Justice Department announced court filings Thursday in a bid to force the seizure of multiple shipments of the Iranian missiles bound for Yemen, which the U.S. Navy had confiscated as contraband in international waters. The funds from the sale of the oil fuel will go to the U.S. Victims of State-Sponsored Terrorism Fund. The 4 tankers had 1.1 million barrels of Iranian oil and enough blasting caps to supply U.S. military forces for a year. The tankers supposedly had been falsely identifying their cargo in ship transfers as part of an illegal smuggling ring to support terrorism. The U.S. sold the oil to Venezuela for $40 million. A spokesperson for the Iranian mission at the United Nations called the seizure of Iranian property as piracy, pure and simple. Last Saturday, 200 migrants were aboard a boat that caught fire and capsized hours after it had left Senegal for the Canary Islands, making it the worst shipwreck of 2020, the United Nations reports. 140 people drowned and the rest managed to be rescued by fishermen. The number of migrants being trafficked has increased in recent weeks, as well as more shipwrecks and deaths. 11,000 migrants had reached the Canary Islands this year, as opposed to 2,500 during the same period last year. Deaths have doubled as well. Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, said he was horrified at the news and said, "Every person searching for a better life deserves safety and dignity. We need safe, legal routes for migrants and refugees." The UN agency tracking the number and ships says, "We call for unity between governments to partner to dismantle trafficking and smuggling networks that take advantage of the desperate." In Senegal, fishing stocks have collapsed, decimating the regional economy. China and the European Union own the fishing rights currently, and some believe giving the rights back to the West African people would help to decline the need for migrants to leave to search for work. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services will announce Tuesday a decision to remove gray wolves from the Endangered Species Act, and the wolves will no longer receive federal protection. Officials argue that the wolf species has exceeded all conservative goals for recovery after 45 years, since they were nearly wiped out. Environmentalists condemned the decision, saying there was still much work to be done to guarantee the gray wolf stance, saying the removal of protections is premature. They will be going to court to challenge the Fish and Wildlife Service's decision, just as they did when the Obama administration tried to do the same thing. In New Zealand, 65% of voters approved legalizing medically assisted euthanasia, but rejected legalizing cannabis, as New Zealand has historically taken a conservative approach to drugs. According to Donald Trump's tax records obtained by the New York Times, he received $2.6 million in net income from operations in Turkey from 2015 to 2018. In 2012, Trump had opened Trump Towers, Istanbul, and Turkey's President Erdogan had attended. In 2018, during a scheduled talk between the leaders, Erdogan handed President Trump a memo written by a Turkish bank called Halbank, under investigation by the U.S. for illegal money trading to Iran. Erdogan argued that U.S. sanctions law didn't apply and asked Trump to also replace the prosecutors in Manhattan investigating the bank. After this, in December, the Justice Department under William Barr and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo would become more involved with the Halbank case. Representatives of the bank refused to admit wrongdoing and insisted on a deal that would end investigations and drop existing charges. Erdogan requested the same from Trump and his administration. Prosecutors in charge of the case felt they had no leverage against the bank officials to reach a settlement because of the relationship and interference with Trump and Erdogan. In June 2019, Mr. Barr, the Attorney General, pushed to allow the Justice Department to drop charges against the defendants and terminate investigations into other conspirators like Halbank's former general manager and Turkey's former economy minister. Akan Erdoğan, a former member of Turkey's parliament, says the proposal to drop charges against the bank by Barr would be a gift to Mr. Erdogan and critical to his political standing in Turkey by eliminating criminal charges against a member of his inner circle. Erdogan wasn't so much as saving the Turkish bank as much as himself. President Trump has been viewed of being too sympathetic and deferential to President Erdogan of Turkey. Last October, President Trump withdrew U.S. troops abruptly to allow Turkey to invade and send troops into Syria, a move Trump was criticized for as it broke old agreements put in place for U.S. troop protections in the area. After the backlash, the Justice Department then decided it would finally move against Halbank and filed indictments for money laundering and conspiracy with Iran. During the Obama administration, President Erdogan had tried to get the then President Obama and Joe Biden to stop the early stages of the Halbank investigation. Biden said about this, "If the president were to take this into his own hands, what would happen would be he would be impeached for violating the separation of powers." On Friday, the government of Qatar publicly apologized for the women who were given invasive strip searches at Hamad International Airport. The incident happened last October when a baby newborn was found in a garbage bag in the airport toilets. Airport officials then pulled women off of 10 planes to check their bodies for signs of having given birth recently. 18 travelers had been Australian, and it was Australia that pressured Qatar to open an investigation into the incident. The preliminary investigation shows standard procedures were violated at the airport. Sydney, Australia is threatening to cut off service to airline Qatar Airways in protest of how their citizens were treated. Well, that will conclude the news for today. If you'd like to read up on any of our topics, please see our description below for sources. Subscribe to receive a daily news update. Thank you for listening. Be relaxed, be informed, be connected.